Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. As you heard in the intro, our guest today is Cometa Physics founder Reginald Martin. Reginald, thank you for being here today.
Hey, Melvin, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn all about this topic today. So, what first drew you to the study of ancient Kemetic science?
Just life was happening to me and it wasn't happening as the way I wanted, So one of the things that one question that really kind of just sparked everything is in a sense, how could I get my prayers answered? Okay. And for me, it wasn't necessarily in the context of religion. It was more about metaphysics and the law of attraction. Okay. So around 2006, I had watched that movie like, many people did. But things were not happening the way that I wanted them to happen. So I was like, well, what's going on here? And so I wanted to get some questions answered, and I ended up getting laid off. Okay, I had gotten a teaching using the principles of the secret, and then I got laid off. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't ask for this. So then basically at that point, I was unemployed, but it gave me an opportunity to research. So that's kind of how I backed into researching these ideas. And then lo and behold, I found out things about the secret, but I also found out things about my childhood religion, which was Christianity, that led me to a lot of things there that I found out too, that basically saw how a lot of things had been changed.
All right, so can you share? You already started to share, but some more about your what led to the creation of Cometa Physics for.
Yeah, so I basically, like I said, I wanted to know, I wanted to have some control over my life. So that was really the main thing. It was like, the secret basically said that thoughts become things. Okay. And so again, I had been applying these principles and studying metaphysics for a number of years, but things were kind of hit and miss. And so I was trying to find out, okay, well, is this really something true? Where did it come from? And they alluded to the idea that the Greeks had the secret. Okay, and in the movie The Secret, they just kind of showed the Greeks in some scrolls, and they didn't say them. But at that point, it kind of clued me in that okay, if the Greeks had the secret, it's ancient. But I also knew from just reading a lot of books that the ancient Egyptians taught the Greeks. So that led me to say, okay, well, what were they talking about in ancient Egypt that the Greeks took and started doing whatever they did? And so that's what kind of led me to discovering ancient Kemetic science, which is an ancient African spirituality that basically spawned the Greek Gnostics, and the Greek Gnostics spawned from the Greek Gnostics came a lot of Christian beliefs and a lot of Christian doctrines. So kind of one ancient Egypt is kind of like the grandfather of Christianity in a way, but Christianity just changed the ancient teachings and created a religion from it. But Kemetaphysics is not a religion.
All right, so what does it mean to be a spiritual architect?
So a spiritual architect means that and again, connecting it back to law of attraction, which a lot of people are familiar with, it is really about the idea of being able to architect and create your reality. So from a metaphysics perspective, you are the architect of your reality here on the earth plane. So we all incarnated here basically to learn how to become architects. So when we incarnate, we forget. Okay, we forget that we are basically souls having a human experience. And your goal or you're in an earth school. So while you're in the school, you are supposed to, at some point, remember that you are an architect and you start to become a creator of your reality. That means that you start to overcoming your fears and your doubts about your abilities to create.
All right, so who or what are some of your most influential teachers or inspirations?
Let's see, who would I say? They probably wouldn't necessarily be in the realm of metaphysics. They might be history, like Sheikh Anta Diop was some books that I read from him. I like metaphysics books. So one of my favorite books is the Seth Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul. So not necessarily people that are alive today, but just different things that I've learned through them that has helped me create the life that I desire.
So, how would you explain metaphysics in simple terms so that we can all understand?
Okay, so metaphysics is basically the idea that you are the creator of your reality. So, from one perspective, the ancient teachings of Ma'at says that the idea of as above, so below comes from these ancient teachings, where and as within, so without. You are literally projecting your reality that you experience from your own inner vibrational essence. So, your thoughts and beliefs are projected into reality that becomes the feedback system or the feedback loop for the life that you're having. What that means is that if you don't like something about your life, as the architect of your reality, you have the ability to change your beliefs that will then change your life.
All right. So, how does metaphysics merge ancient wisdom with modern psychology?
So, in this sense, it becomes more about the practical application of it. So, from a lot of times, spiritual systems, I just use a contrast here. A lot of times, spiritual systems can get to where they're really theoretical and philosophical. And what I mean by that is for instance, somebody, spiritual systems might say, yeah, we're all one, and oneness and unity, and blah blah blah. And that's a a great idea, but how does that apply in your life? So through metaphysics, the way that that is done is through what I call the emotional barometer technique. And what that means is that you use your emotional states to calibrate with your inner feelings and emotions. So what that allows you to do is with whatever you're feeling in the moment, you tune into yourself. And you might be going through some difficulties, depression, you might be going through whatever it might be. But when you can tune into yourself, then you can start to take control of your inner state and your emotions. That connects to the psychology, because if you're depressed, nobody wants to stay depressed. So how do you move through that? And one of the ways that I teach that you move through that, and just from life experience, myself and from other people's clients and that I have taught with these ideas, is that you have to find some aspect of joy. Okay, some aspect of you feeling good that helps lift you out of the depression. So that's how you're going to connect the psychology to your inner state. So that's one of the ways, practical ways that metaphysics works.
All right. Have you had any formal training in psychology?
Yes, I actually have a degree in psychology, so a formal bachelor's degree in it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What are some of the most common inherited limitations you see in?
So one of the things that I noticed, Melvin, was just growing up. I grew up in poverty. And so, having been, when I went to college and started studying psychology, it was already something I was interested in, because I like to figure out what made people tick. Why do people do what they do? And having grown up in poverty, I looked around my community and I looked around the people who were like me, and I was like, well, why are we living this way? And one of the questions was, that, if you supposedly believe a certain way, and a lot of times this was just through religion. If you believe a certain way, then you were supposedly going to be blessed, with certain things. Well, for me, that didn't add up. I was looking around my community for the people for the African diaspora that looked a lot like me around the world. I was noticing that there was a lot of poverty and stuff like that. So it was kind of, why was that? And so that question itself just started to take me down a road of how can I change this? How can I change this first about myself? And then once I figured out how I could change it about myself, then it was like, okay, well, other people will want to know this knowledge and information. So it just started me on that road of really pulling together these ideas, and then taking the ancient concepts and putting them in modern, up to date language.
All right. So, how does guilt and shame play into the way we construct our inner architecture?
Powerful question, because a lot of times that's what religion did, was made us operate from a place of we're born sinners. Okay, we're born broken, and so guilt says that you've automatically done something wrong. Okay, shame means that you are wrong. Something, something, your being is wrong. And from a religious perspective, you're automatically put in that box because you're said that you are a born sinner. For me, that was a problem. And I saw how, to me, that idea was being reflected in our communities, that if you're a born sinner, you're broken, you need a savior. Okay. And if you need a savior, then that means that you were powerless yourself to change your circumstances. So all those things came into being when it came to us believing in the idea that we're broken, then we're born sinners, we're guilty. And then because we're broken, something is wrong with us. So guilt and shame played a huge role in that. And from a psychological perspective, I recognize that people who believe that they're broken cannot be builders. So you cannot build communities. For me, growing up in poverty, economically, my community wasn't self-sustaining. So the stores or anything that was in my community was operated about by people that were outside of that community. My question was, is why couldn't the people inside the community do the same thing? Why couldn't they be the builders of the stores or the doctor's offices or whatever it might be? And again, just taking it back to the psychology of it, to me, it says that if you believe something is wrong with you, then you won't have the confidence to build something within your community. You won't have the confidence to take a risk, because I know psychologically, people who don't have confidence, they don't look at failures as opportunities to learn. They look at failures as confirmation of who they are, that negative aspect they believe themselves to be. So it just, one thing to me just led to another, but the whole umbrella was the negative belief in yourself that we were taught every Sunday.
Can you share a story of someone whose life transformed through comedic physics? And that person could be, if you want.
Yeah, that is part of me. Definitely is something that I teach. It's not theoretical stuff. It's things that I went through. But I've had people reach out to me just over the years, and this was just a couple of months ago, where somebody reached out to me, basically on my YouTube channel, and they said that they had a friend that had came to my YouTube channel, and this friend was a member of the LGBTQ community, and they were living a life where they were just miserable. And they said that after they came to my community and came and watched, some of the videos about metaphysics and things that I was teaching, they said that person just literally flipped their life overnight, flipped around and did a 180 to where they were living their best life. And they said that they came to my channel because they wanted to know what that person had gotten from my YouTube channel. So it was basically the person was looking at themselves from that negative lens, that I'm a born sinner, something is wrong with me, I'm shamed because I don't fit the profile of what is supposed to be the good Christian person. And they were basically having a lot of conflict within their family and within themselves. But once they learn these ideas, that one, from a metaphysics standpoint, every human being on the planet is a valid representation of the creator in human form. Once they took that idea within themselves, that they are an expression of the creator expressing themselves, then they change from that guilt-based and shame-based idea to, hey, I'm a creator and I'm valid and I'm worthy of living my life as I am. And it shifted their whole life.
Okay. All right. That's a good story. So, how can leaders and creators use your framework to make decisions with more clarity?
So one of the things that it does is just, again, like the emotional barometer technique. So I know that a lot of people have the issue of, and a lot of us just, how do I find my purpose? you know. And a lot of times as leaders and creators, we're on that track and we don't necessarily know, know we want to do something different and we want to make a difference, but we don't necessarily know what that is. So using the emotional barometer technique, one of the ways is just using that to calibrate yourself. And the way I teach this idea is that joy is your baseline. So it's, as souls having a human experience, joy is the baseline. So you allow joy to be the guide. You allow joy to light that path. So as a leader, if you're looking to find your purpose, you basically, the things that light you up within, that get you excited, those are usually the things that are going to lead you to your purpose. Now, a lot of times we're not, because life gets in the way, or if something is not, if it doesn't conform to societal norms, then we end up having those conflicts within ourselves. And until we deal with those conflicts within ourselves and we end up bucking these societal norms, then we end up staying off path. We end up living um, living a life of doing things just to conform to what family says should be done or what society says should be done. But when we have the ability to trust ourselves and let go, follow that joy, then things open up. It's like the things that you need along the way to confirm your path just seem to just like magically appear. The people that you need, the resources, whatever you have, they just magically just appear in your path. I can attest to that throughout different points in my life, big time. Just uh, when I decided that I wanted to become a school teacher. So it's like I have this pattern, like every 5 years, I make a change. I don't consciously say, this is 5 years, I want to make a change. It's just something in me just says, okay, I want to do something different. And I go after it. I believe I'm a creator of my reality. So when I'm ready to make a change, I change something. And it's like things would just appear, the people, the resources, whatever I need, they appear to help me along my path. But I've learned to trust that. I know from a religious perspective, a lot of times we're taught not to trust ourselves. I remember a scripture growing up that said, lean not on your own understanding. And that taught people not to trust them, to basically the power that you need to create your life or to live your life is outside of you. You need to get the okay from other people to do that. Melvin, when you live like that, life becomes drudgery because you're not even living. You don't become your own standard for your life. You're living for everybody else, and you're living in everybody else's box, and that box can just strangle you. So I would say as leaders, with metaphysics, joy becomes your path. Joy becomes your light that helps you along your way, that it becomes the guidance system for you.
All right, so what kind of daily practices can help reinforce a strong inner architecture?
Oh, that's one of the most, I think, powerful and simple. And that's one of the things I would like to say is that metaphysics' processes and tools are very simple. But a very simple tool that I learned just through experience was to recognize that the universe first is a friendly place. Okay. And it's a different way to operate, a different paradigm, because we're told growing up, I was told that around the corner, evil and enemies are lurking, and we have to be constantly vigilant. But from a comedic perspective, the universe is friendly and the universe wants you to be abundant. So whenever things are not happening the way I want, or I would say there's a lot of times we might be dealing with life in the context of we have more month than money. So when we fretting about our bills, we project these fears into the future of what can happen. So that's what we bring into ourselves. But I learned a technique to recognize, to bring me back to the present moment and to ground myself, was that to recognize that all is well. Okay. In this moment, unless something is happening that I'm getting sit out on the street, or that's in that moment, or unless somebody's beating me over the head in that moment, then the fear that I'm projecting can't be true. but I can take it back to right now and know that all is well. You can repeat that 100 times a day whenever those fears start to crop up, whenever those doubts start to come in. That's one little technique that is so powerful. It has a lot of metaphysical ramifications to it as well, but just a simple idea to ground you and keep you from living in that projection of those fears, all is well. A simple technique.
So, how do you approach spiritual work with people from different belief systems?
The principles, and that's a great question because the principles, no matter what your belief system is, from a metaphysical perspective, we're all human beings that are projected into this reality to live our lives and to experience our lives. So if you're talking about from like religious belief systems or dogmatic belief systems, the idea is you really want to deal with the negative beliefs. And no matter what type of belief system that you have, what background is in, if you have a negative belief system, then the principles are the same. The principles in dealing with the negativity are the same. So the idea of where you come from, who you are, if you're a human being, the principles are the same to deal with. So it doesn't really matter about the background. It's just recognizing the principles and instituting those in your life to make the changes that you want.
Okay, so what's the biggest misunderstanding people have about Kemetic science?
I think one of the things is just because it came from an African source that, growing up, I was told that Africa had, basically no impact on society. But ancient Kemeticism actually is the foundation of Christianity, which has had a big impact on the Western world. But the principles of it were just distorted to a point to where from the ancient Africans, and these were ideas. So I would say that Kemeticism is the mouthpiece of really African spirituality because they actually learn from more ancient African concepts. But we're talking about something that is basically about humanity. It doesn't matter race or creed or whatever. It's just this is something with humanity. But it's the idea that Africa had nothing to offer, or that we were taught that anything African must be due. It must have witchcraft involved. It must have Satanism or something to that aspect. And that's just not true. One of the other things that frustrated me in the beginning, studying these ideas early, was that people will talk about Kemetic spirituality, but in reality, they just wrapped up religion in a new form. And then they use history saying they will talk about spirituality, but not how to spirituality, if that makes any sense. So the idea that it's just history or that is something negative behind it, that's a lot of mistakes that a lot of people make about Kemetic spirituality.
All right, so how do you respond to skeptics who dismiss metaphysics as unscientific?
I don't try to because we can all have our own beliefs about this stuff. And I know there's a lot of times what happens is when people leave religion, they pretty much go to the idea of, humanism and atheism, that there's no God, there's no this, no that. People are going to believe what they're going to believe. And so I create content that attracts the people who are interested in these ideas. But to try and convince somebody to change their mind, to me, that's an arrogant place to live in. That I'm saying to you that what I believe is superior and you should come over to my beliefs. I don't ever want to take that position with somebody, because that's basically how religion was put on people. So I create the content, and if somebody agrees with it, then we can move forward. And to me, we move in a vibrational cohesiveness that we can create something more. But creating conflict to me creates a dichotomy that ends up weakening everything.
All right, so have you ever faced resistance or backlash for your approach?
Yeah, man. I've gotten death threats, from Christian people on my YouTube channel. So and so it's but I'm at a point in my life, Melvin, where hey, I've lived a good life and I'm happy. So if somebody wants to come at me, bring it. But you best believe I'm not going to turn the other cheek. But yeah, so a lot of times, Melvin, these ancient teachings were long before Christianity existed. Okay, and they have a level of truth to them that is spread over all spiritual systems around the world. Now, I'm not saying that all spiritual systems come from Africa. That's not what I mean. But there is a commonality among these ideas that fit because we are human beings having a human experience. There are certain things that we go through. Okay, certain things that all humans have gone through at different points in society. So even you can look at now and how AI is impacting our society. A lot of people are afraid. So a lot of people are dealing emotionally with a lot of stuff about AI. Is it going to replace me? Is my job going to replace me? Well, I mean, is AI going to take away my job? Well, those same things have happened, when we went from the industrial age to the information age, when we went from the agricultural age to the industrial age, there was turmoil. So that turmoil is mirrored in the ancient mythology. So the ancient mythology actually puts those ideas that we go through as a framework for us to look at and know how to deal with it. You can think of it as I like to think of it as an algorithm for computers that, an algorithm helps you can put in certain data in this algorithm, it processes and then comes out something new. The ancient mythology is the same. Okay. One, have you ever been through something, Melvin, where you were like emotionally like feeling in turmoil, but then after, going through it, all of a sudden you realize that you didn't have to be in turmoil and you relaxed, you know? That's
Mhm.
something that goes that all of us have that happens to all of us at some point in our life if we've ever lived, they ever lived that life. And since you and I are talking, we are living. So that's a good thing. But what I just described was one of the miracles in the Bible. Okay.
Mm.
So one of this, and it's a framework, it's an ancient framework. But that miracle was the idea of Jesus walking on water. In this framework, walking the water actually represents our emotions. And then of course that water was in turmoil, it was in turbulent, and Jesus had to end up walking on the water. Well, the idea of Jesus walking on the water is actually the idea of us becoming enlightened enough to recognize that we can calm the storm. The storm was within us. But once you calm that storm, you walk on the water and you emotionally calm yourself. And in that same story, Peter, who was one of the disciples, which represents the aspects of ourselves, Peter got on out the boat and started walking on the water. And then all of a sudden, Peter looked around like, whoa, wait a minute, and sank. Sometimes when we can go through and we can calm ourselves, something can happen and then we can get agitated again, you know? But the idea is that at some point you calm yourself and you rise above your emotions. So that's what that ancient story meant before it became a so-called miracle biblically. It's something that we all go through. And each one of those miracles is the same thing. It's a different story, a different framework to tell us how we as souls are reacting to life.
All right. So, how do you personally keep your inner self strong and balanced?
It's a constant work. It's a constant process. So as human beings, we're gonna go through turbulence. I'm someone who I love to challenge myself. I live on the edge of my comfort zone. I'll try new things that I hadn't tried before. But when that happens though, Melvin, it's like you're gonna go through fears. You're gonna run into yourself, you know, and you're gonna project fears into that experience on some kind of level. For me, like when I decided to become a coach and a creator and create and do the stuff that I'm doing, I had to quit my job as a teacher. And uh, I am somebody who grew up in a family that we weren't entrepreneurs. You know, we got jobs, and we worked on our jobs, and we stayed as long as we could. So for me, I got to a point to where I wanted to be my own boss. So it was one day I decided that, well, my guides talked to me. Okay, I asked my guides, and again, a lot of people might not believe in that, but that's something that's a part of Kemetic spirituality, is that we can tap into a higher aspect of ourselves. And so for me, it was about when I said I called my boss one day, my principal, and said, I called in well. I called my principal and said, well, I'm not coming in anymore. Okay, I'm done. You know. And Melvin, I bet on myself. At that point in my life, Melvin, I didn't have a whole lot of money in the bank or anything like that. So you're talking about somebody that I didn't have a whole lot of money and I had more month in front of me than I did money. Okay. And so that was a nerve wracking time. Well, what do I do to keep myself balanced in that point? You know, what did I do? All is well. Because even when things were looking like they were going to be bleak, I said, all is well. I relaxed. Well, to make a long story short, Melvin, in the next 3 months, my YouTube channel went from 8,000 subscribers to 40,000.
Hmm.
I replaced my teacher income within those 3 months. So something worked. So my guys told me that this is time, and I just trusted it because, again, you can go back and say, well, how do you trust that? It's just trial and error. So I've made some errors too. I've lost everything I've owned a couple of times, chasing my dream. So I've gone through things that so when I'm talking about these ideas, they're not just theoretical constructs or philosophical constructs. This is practical application of how do we steady ourselves? How do we bring ourselves into balance, when we're going through the storm? So those are things that I've lived, and those are the things that I teach. So even practitioners that are helping their clients and stuff like that, this is something that can go right alongside whatever you're doing, to help your clients.
All right, so, what role do intuition and logic play in your decision making?
Big role to me. When something that how we call something common sense. Man, that's just common sense. Well, to me, common sense is when intuition and logic are in harmony. Then it just seems like it's so obvious. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times, what happened is we were taught again, and I go back to that idea of lean not on your own understanding. We were taught that we had to get so much validation from outside ourselves, that that God was something outside of ourselves that we had to worship and curry favor towards. Okay, so that in itself causes a disconnect. It causes a disconnect from your own intuition, and it causes a disconnect from the ability of you to even trust yourself. Okay. So that to me is one of the differences that I say between religion and spirituality is that religion is the idea that there is of you is outside of you. Okay. And it's something that you have to build a relationship with or placate in order to get its blessing, so to speak. Okay. From a Kemetic spirituality perspective, you are the same stuff as the creator having a human experience. So the journey is about you recognizing your own divinity. It's about you recognizing your own ability to be the architect and creator of your life. So when you operate from that place, it is about learning to trust yourself, but it is also about learning to that your power is within you to make any changes in your life. So that's one of the biggest ways to me that you connect logic and intuition is that knowing that you are an aspect of the creator, and then you use logic and intuition as you go along your life to connect stuff. When you use that logic and intuition, things just become obvious.
All right, so I just have a couple questions left as we start to wind down the conversation today. So, what's your vision for the future of comedics?
My vision is that I'm helping millions of people all over the world to basically learn these ideas, because I think that what it will bring is a peace, a level of peace within humanity. Because I think that ultimately, when we love ourselves and love who we are, we move from this idea that I'm broken and I'm a sinner and stuff. That to me, that automatically puts us in a space where we can't even trust the next human being, because we assume that everybody's a sinner and wicked on some level. Even if it's not, you not thinking that, on some level you just can't trust the next person. Metaphysics is recognizing that everybody is an aspect of the creator, and when you can believe in yourself, hold that space of love for yourself, and recognize that the other person has the same spark within them as you, then I think that humanity is going to be a lot better off.
Okay, and as a final question today, if you could leave listeners with one powerful question to ask themselves, what would that question
Am I living life on my terms? Am I living life through my joy? That was two questions.
be? We'll put a semicolon there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a good way to wind down the conversation today. So our guest today has been Physics founder Reginald Martin. Reginald, thank you so much for being here today. I enjoyed the conversation.
Hey, thank you for having me here, Melvin. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having the conversation.
Yes. Please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about my guest and the things we discussed today. That's it for today's conversation, an episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.